I just want to talk you through how a narcissist or abusive person sucks you in and how the cycle of abuse works. Firstly, what happens is they love bomb you. When you first meet them, it's the most intense feeling. They are just all over you. They are loving you intensely. They're telling you things you really want to hear. You're the only one for them. They've never met anyone like you. They've been the person they've been needing all their life. They sweep you off your feet and promise you the world. Marriage, babies, whatever it is you need to hear, they will just tell you, and you will feel so fantastic and you will feel great. It's almost like fireworks have gone on, and it's like a drug. You feel so high on the first meeting. And it's their charisma that just really sucks you in. And then gradually, bad behavior starts to creep in. Just little bits of suddenly they erupt in anger out of the blue, and you think, wow, that wasn't expected. And it's a flash of anger. It's suddenly turning on you and saying something really nasty. Whatever it is, it's very subtle at first, and it's happened so quickly that it's over, and you think, did I imagine that? What just happened there? And then they feel really bad, so they go, oh, I'm so sorry, that's not me, that's not like me. And they're remorseful, and they say, oh, it's because I've had this really bad past, or I'm down on my luck at the moment, I've been hard done by, I didn't mean it, it's not me. So you sort of feel a bit sorry for them. You think, oh gosh, they've been hard done by, they've had a bad time, oh, poor thing. So then you forgive them, and you just dismiss that very, very quickly because they didn't mean it, it wasn't really them. And then gradually it starts to get a little bit more and a little bit worse, these flashes of the bad behavior that you see. And if you question them or bring it up that they've been like this and it's not really acceptable, they then immediately make out why it's not their fault. They'll make excuses. It's whether it's their bad past, or whether it's, well, you shouldn't have made me that angry. You shouldn't have gone at me the second I walked in the door. No wonder I got angry. Or you shouldn't have said that about me in front of your friends. That really hurt my feelings. Whatever it is, it's excuses that they're not to blame for this behavior. Anybody else is to blame but them. Or they might just disappear. They might have a rage and flash of anger and get really, really angry, throw things around, and then walk out the door. And then you don't see them for a couple of days, and then you think, what have I done? What just caused that? And then a couple of days later, they'll reappear as though nothing has happened. They just pretend it didn't happen. And if you bring it up, then you're the one at fault for, why do you want to cause a problem in the relationship when we're so happy? Why are you being so cold when I'm being so loving? So it's all very subtle, and actually what's happening is they're testing your boundaries very early on as to what you'll accept. The flash of anger. Did she walk out of the relationship or he leave me as a result of that behavior? No, they're stuck around. So then they try a little bit more and a little bit more, and they start to reveal more of that darker side. And the more it gets excused away, or they can get away with it by blaming everybody else or you, the more it just starts to happen. And it then, what happens is you start to change your behavior because you think, well, maybe I did say something because he was so loving or she was so wonderful a few minutes before, and then suddenly they weren't, that maybe it was something I did do. So you start to change your behavior, anticipating it and hoping that by doing so, you'll affect the outcome and it won't happen again. So you start twisting yourself in knots, trying to change your behavior, and in the hope of keeping the peace and smoothing things over and getting that wonderful person back that you first met. And then it just goes in a circle. The pattern repeats, the pattern repeats, the pattern repeats. And then you start to get the first signs of physical violence. A push or a shove. Something like they throw you against the wall, or grab your hair, or just push you really hard. Something that they sort of explain away, well, that isn't really physical violence. And something that they also might even pretend has never happened. Or they just immediately after they've done it become so remorseful and upset that, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just did that. I don't want to turn out like my father who was violent, or whatever. The remorse comes and they're really upset, and so you end up starting to feel more sorry for them and their remorse and their tears and their upset than you do about the fact that you've just been shoved up against a wall. So you start to get these signs, and again, in a way, it's testing the boundaries. And if you accept their remorse and I'm never going to do that again, then in a way, they think, oh, okay, I got away with that, and they can do it again. And then what happens as this cycle of abuse starts, the highs that you have with them that are so wonderful and so intense, and you just feel amazing, are followed by this tension that builds up until something erupts and they explode. There might be that push or that shove, and it's high followed by low, high followed by a low, and these highs get higher but fewer and further between, and the lows get lower and lower and more frequent. And so you're always, in a way, chasing that good person again, and you start to modify your behaviour even more, thinking, well, if only I do this or that, I can get the nice side of them back again. And so you're always chasing that high, you're always trying to change you and fix things and make peace again. But all the while what's happening is your self-esteem is getting whittled away and whittled away and whittled away, to the point where you start to believe you're worthless, you start to believe you're deserving of that abuse, and you start to believe them when they say it's your fault, and you start to accept more than your share of responsibility for that relationship, because you are now accepting their share of responsibility for the relationship, and they're not being accountable for their actions and their behavior. Instead, they're blaming you, and you are starting to believe that maybe you are to blame. So this cycle of abuse is very, very pervasive, and by the time you get, if you do, to physical violence, that cycle has worn you down so much that it is very, very hard to break free from. And their manipulative tactics that they used, like gaslighting, which is where they tell you you imagined the abuse that they dished out to you, or you're over-exaggerating it, or you're too sensitive. That gaslighting, that mirroring onto you the blame. For example, if they're the one that's lying, they tell you you're the one that's the liar. All this stuff that happens alongside of this cycle of abuse that's really, really manipulative. By the time you even realize that you're in this abusive relationship, your self-esteem is so low that it's almost impossible to find the courage to leave. And you also have become so dependent on them, your abuser, who has made you feel so low. But with one word of, I'm sorry, I do love you, I don't know, I am responsible and I'm going to change, which they say only until they can get control over you and then start abusing you again. That's what you start longing for and needing to make you feel better. And so you are trapped in this really distorted, dysfunctional cycle of abuse, where the person abusing you is the only person who can make you feel good again. So if any of this sounds familiar to you, what I would say now is get out, because the longer you stay in the cycle of abuse, the harder it is to leave. I know, because I've been there, and it was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, was leaving an abusive relationship. So get help and support, because you can't do it alone. But if you are in this cycle of abuse, you need help, you need support. I've listed domestic violence resources on my website, www.beingunbeatable.com, under DV resources. They are free, there are helplines that you can phone, and they will guide you and support you as to what you need to do to get help to get out. I know a lot of people stay in that cycle of abuse because they want closure. They believe that the loving person that always comes after the abuse is the real person, not the nasty abuser. And if I can just love them more, if I can prove to them I'm worthy, then I will finally have that wonderful person and they will love me and everything's going to be okay. But it is a false hope, and it is a false promise. And you will chase that like an elusive high, first high that I've heard you get from heroin, but you never ever get the same amount of high again. Or you might be forever chasing that, I want them to tell me they know that they were abusive and they now accept responsibility and blame, and they're going to get help, and they are finally going to change for me. Again, you could be waiting forever for that to happen. You could also end up dying waiting for that to happen, because 2 women are killed every week by an intimate partner, and many men are abused from their partner as well. So I would just say, please, if you're in that cycle of abuse, get help and support to get out now. The longer you stay, the harder it will be to get free.